The Self-Learning Blueprint, a book by Peter Hollins. There you go. If you're watching the video, there's the Kindle version, the picture. I don't have the physical copy, but there it is. The Self-Learning Blueprint by Peter Hollins. So this is what we're reading, episode 51. Thanks for joining me. And I'm going to talk a bit about what I learned from the book, what I found helpful. The subtitle is A Strategic Plan to Break Down Complex Topics, Comprehend Deeply, and Teach Yourself Anything. Quite a bold claim, you might say. And who is Peter Hollins, the author? Let me quote for you from his website. He is a best-selling author and human psychology and behavior researcher, a dedicated student of the human condition. He possesses a BS and an MA in psychology, worked with dozens of people from all walks of life. After working in private practice for years, he has turned his sights to writing and applying his years of education to help people improve their lives from the inside out. That's apparently who he is. And thanks, Peter, for writing the book. Though you and I have never met, I feel like almost we have, because I've read the book. And the reason I've been reading the book is I've been doing quite a lot of reading and learning recently on the whole, if you like, science of learning. And that's because next year, at this time of recording, I'm hoping to be able to set up a new teaching resource, a biblical teaching training resource that will be a blessing to anybody who is interested. It looks like we'll be setting up within the Thames Valley area, making it available to all the churches in the UK and Ireland and beyond. And what's on my mind is that it's one thing to teach, it's one thing to teach things accurately, but it's important that we teach in such a way that enables people to learn, that makes it not so much easy for people to learn, but more makes learning effective. And so I've done a lot of teaching in my life, but I haven't done so much study on how to teach in such a way as to help people learn. And so what I thought I'd do is start with, well, a lot of resources I found online, but also books like this this book is about how to teach yourself, how to learn yourself effectively, how to investigate and study things in such a way as you find that things stick. I thought if I can learn how to learn the techniques to teach myself, that may help me in my ability to teach other people effectively. So that's the reason for reading this book. Now, in the book, there are 4 simple chapters. It's not a long book. The first chapter is called A Self-Learning Plan, the Myth of Requirements and Macro and Micro Planning. The second chapter is the 4 Pillars to Self-Learning, Transforming and Synthesizing Knowledge, Combining the New with the Familiar, Self-Testing and Retrieval Practice. Absorption requires space. You need space in the brain there. Third chapter, Tactics for Learning, Managing Your Attention Span. Pomodoro and Friends, Change Locations, Construct Vivid Imagery, and The Question Master. And the fourth and final chapter, Navigating Obstacles and Failure, the Procrastination Cycle, Academic Buoyancy, Productive Failure, Inspiration Through Failure, and some resources at the end. So that's why I read it. Now the book, for those of you who know me, you know that I teach theologically, I help leadership teams and all that kind of thing, do a lot of preaching. This book is not a it's not a religious book, it's not a theological book, it's a practical book about the science and techniques of learning. But there's so much in there you could apply spiritually in many ways. Many of the concepts in the book are familiar to me, even before I'd read them, from other research I've done online or from things I did study at the London School of Theology when I did a module on Christian education. So most of it's not brand new, although some is. But I like the way that Peter puts a lot of it. It's quite refreshing. So there's some fresh thinking in there. So today I'm not going to give you a blow-by-blow account of everything in the book, because there wouldn't be much point in that. You might as well just read the book. But I will share with you some of my big takeaways. I've got at least, I think, 4 or so. But let's see how we go. Number 1. Takeaway number 1. My first big takeaway is test yourself. One of the ways to learn is to test yourself, a vital way. In other words, simply cramming more stuff into the old noggin here doesn't mean we actually learn it, or indeed that it stays there. And neither does going over the same material again and again and again work in terms of settling it in the memory, in the accessible and usable memory, let's put it that way. There's a place for highlighting, there's a place for rereading, there's a place for those things, but they don't guarantee learning. Testing ourselves is one of the best ways to make sure that what we learn sticks. How do you feel about testing yourself? I don't like it. It's hard work, and it reveals to me my shortcomings, and that's an uncomfortable feeling. But if we don't do it, things won't ultimately stick. As he says, instead of putting more stuff into our brains, retrieval practice helps us take knowledge out of our brains and put it to use. That's what cements memory. And I want to cement the right things in my memory. One of the things I've done that is suggested by in the book, but also by other things I've been reading about, is using flashcards. Seems like a pretty old-fashioned concept, but of course you can use digital flashcards, and I've downloaded an app called Anki, one of the more popular ones, and I'm currently using it to learn the main principles from this actual book as well. So using spaced repetition, or what they call distributed practice, it's a way to ensure that the quality of the learning is high, because quantity is not the key issue. The idea of just continually repeating things over and over again, that doesn't necessarily make it stick. The quality of the practice is what really matters, and that's why I'm using the flashcard app, and I'm beginning to learn some of these concepts a little better now. You can look into that if you want. I'll put a link in the show notes. As he says, instead of measuring the number of hours you spend on something, try instead measuring the number of times you can revisit it. So you go back, you have a break, you go back, you have a break, maybe 5 minutes, maybe an hour, and then maybe a day. And you go back to the material to see how much you can remember. So the first thing, test yourself. The second thing, pay attention to your attention, to your capacity for attention. What are the true limits of our learning? It's not the capacity of our brains. As he says, our capacity for learning is almost never limited by the time we have. It is more often limited by the energy and attention that we have. Energy and attention. If you've got energy and you've got attention, you'll have what you need to be able to truly learn something. It's not about time, and it's not about the brain capacity. It's much more about energy and attention. How do we deal with that? It's important we develop our own personally designed strategies to help us to learn the best at the best rate and the best depth possible for us. A method I've heard of before but never used is the Pomodoro technique. Perhaps you've heard of this. It's the idea that you study something for 25 minutes and then take a short break, and then another 25 minutes and take a short break. You can set a timer, which I've done, or you can listen to a piece of music that length. This morning, in fact, I was doing some Bible study from Genesis chapter 17, and my Bible study music is every morning is Mozart Piano Concerto in D minor, number 20, Köchel 466, and I love it, and it's about 25 minutes long, and I have that in the background while I'm doing my Bible study. That comes to an end, and then I get up, go and make a cup of tea, and then come back and play perhaps another piece of music of the same length. It doesn't matter how exactly you measure your 25 minutes or so, but you may find that a useful technique to use, and I've been experimenting with that. When you're focused like that, you say this 25 minutes is just for this study, it helps to focus the mind. So my phone is off on one side, I have the thing I'm studying open, no web browsers of any other kind or anything like that. All the other things on my desk I've put to one side to make sure they don't distract me. I can't see anything visibly in my eye line that's going to blink at me or flash at me. And so I just study something for 25 minutes. That's what I'm working on right now. Wonder if you have anything similar that you've tried and that works for you. So, number three. All right, number three takeaway. Changing locations. Changing locations. One of the more surprising things in the book that I learned is the idea of changing locations when we're trying to learn something. So you sit somewhere, you learn it, and then you can move somewhere else and continue your study or go back over what you were studying using the flashcards or something like that. In other words, don't just sit at a desk the whole time like I am here, but go to different parts of the house. Go outside, go for a walk, listening to a podcast or carrying your flashcards with you, or go and sit in the garden or in a different place of the house. And one of the things I've been doing recently is rather than do all of my study work here, I take my iPad and go to the dining room table, which is through the door over there, and sit there and do some study there. And I have found that being in different locations, the dining room and the study here, it helps me to see things from a different angle, and it helps build different associations with these different places along with the knowledge, so that the knowledge that I'm trying to inculcate into my brain is not fixed with the idea of being here. In other words, I can carry it with me wherever I go. It's a subtle thing, but it seems to be working for me. And they talk about it in the book. He says, if you change locations frequently while learning and processing the same information, you are strengthening your memory because it will be associated with multiple locations, smells, and general stimuli to make you remember it. Interesting. And apparently this has got a name. It's called increased neural scaffolding. There's a phrase for you. Increased neural scaffolding. That's what it's called. So that's what I've been doing. Different place, different chair, different experience, different time of day. Try it for yourself. Change locations. Fourthly, how many have I got? Oh, 5. Right. Number 4, learning that learning is more important than learning. That's my 4th takeaway. Learning that learning is more important than learning. What do I mean by that? Well, the process of learning is more important than the facts we learn. In other words, looking into how I can learn best is more important than whether I'm actually learning a particular topic or not. The topic isn't the issue. If I don't learn how to learn, then I'm not going to learn what I want to learn. A mouthful, but that's why I'm reading these books, and that's why I'm talking to you about it, in case you've got some good tips about the best way to help us learn. I want to learn. I want to remember. I am nearly 60. Maybe my neural capacity is going to drop off a little bit over the next few years. I don't know. But the better I can do, the more I can learn about how to learn, the more that I can at least slow that down or compensate for it, or perhaps even do better than I think is even possible. So learning how to learn is so important. So this is important because sometimes we fail in our learning, don't we? Or the struggle gets so great, we wonder if it's really worth it to persevere. We've got to remember that as long as we're in the process of learning, we're being victorious. Isn't that so important? As long as I'm learning how to learn and I'm in the process of learning, I'm making progress. I've got to believe that, trust in that, and hold on to that. There is a victory there. To be successful, to be commended, especially to ourselves, is very important in the process of learning, because learning, as I said earlier, exposes our weaknesses and makes us feel vulnerable. But if we know that we're growing in our learning and we're learning how to learn better, it's going to give us some encouragement along the way as we try and fit things into our brain. He says this, learning mode is different from results mode, and they have entirely different measures of success. When you want to learn, you are just looking for an increase in knowledge. Any increase is successful learning. Reframe your expectations to make the learning as important as the result, more important if possible. Number 5 takeaway. Put it in your own words. Put it in your own words. Copying and pasting text from a book or other document like the Kindle is it's helpful, but it gives us the impression of learning, where actually it's the acquisition of material. Acquisition of material is not the same thing as actual learning, and it can feel like we're learning because we're highlighting, making notes, copying and pasting from Kindle into some document. Not a waste of time by any means, but it's not the same thing as actually learning. And indeed, it can be quite shallow. The best way to embed new concepts into our brain is to wrestle with the material. Peter, in his book, gives us what he calls the Peter method. So presumably, Peter, that's named after you. These 4 steps are, and I'll just give you the outline. Firstly, normal note-taking with as much detail as you can. So take a lot of notes, a lot of detail, write it at best by hand, of course. Secondly, summarize the information in your own words and clarify the significance noting questions. So you've written your notes, then you've kind of rewritten them in your own words and figuring out if you have questions about some of the things from the talk, the lecture, the YouTube video you watched, whatever it was. Thirdly, connect that particular piece of information to the lesson at large. So you've got a question about something, how does it fit with the rest of the lesson, the topic, whatever you're studying? And fourthly, answering remaining questions and then summarizing each distinct page or section again. So you're summarizing again, and perhaps now you've done all your notes, you've done your noting the questions you've got, you've connected all the bits and pieces together, then you look at the whole again. So if you're looking at bits, now you look at the whole big thing and you ask yourself, what's this really all about overall? So one sentence might have a question and an answer, but what about the whole paragraph or the whole page of notes or the whole lecture? What's at the core of it? What's it really all about? Maybe write a one sentence or one paragraph summary of the whole thing. Part of the reason I make these videos and make podcasts is to help me process what I really think something is about. And preparing this and realizing that I have, amongst all the good things in the book, 5 main takeaways helps me. So these are the 5 things, right? And it helps me to remember what they are, and it helps me engage with them, and it helps me to take them forward. That's one of the reasons I do this. So to wrap up, do any of my 5 takeaways resonate with you? Are they meaningful to you? Have you tried any of them? Are they part of your learning process already? Do you have other techniques and approaches to learning that work for you that I haven't mentioned? I would love to know what they are because I want to learn, as I hope is obvious by now. So do let me know. You can drop me a line by sending me an email, malcolm@malcolmcox.org. You can leave a message on my website, which is malcolmcox.org. You can leave a comment below this video as well. And if you have any other thoughts, do let me know. If you know anybody who might benefit from this recording, please do pass the link on. And if you'd like a free copy of my book on spiritual disciplines, my ebook, then I'll send it to you if you subscribe to my newsletter. You can find that on my website. Well, I think that's it for this week. It's been very interesting. Thank you, Peter Hollins, for writing your book, The Self-Learning Blueprint. If you read it, let me know what you think. If you've read other books and resources about learning, please let me know. The more the merrier. Until the next time, let's carry on reading. Let's carry on learning. So until the next time, take care and God bless.